All right, let's just jump right into this explainer with some real talk about your wallet. Today, we're completely ditching that frustrating, super high-maintenance gardening we've all been dragged into. Instead, we're shifting gears. We are building a deeply resilient, 1,000-year-old Japanese landscape portfolio. Seriously, we're going to focus on planting these 7 unkillable Japanese plants exactly once, so you can literally just sit back and enjoy them for the next 20 years. Sound good? Let's go.
So let's start with a really hard truth about this past spring. I need you to be totally honest with yourself about the $400 you dropped at the local garden center. You know the exact trip I'm talking about, right? The trades of disposable annuals, those specimen perennials that looked absolutely stunning in their little plastic pots in May, but were completely, undeniably dead by August. Well, that money is gone. It's not coming back, and sadly, neither are those plants.
And this perfectly illustrates the main problem. Most American garden centers are totally built around selling you a tiny 6-week retail bloom window. You're basically buying a disposable product. On the flip side, we have a completely different paradigm. We're talking about 7 incredible plants that survived Japan's absolutely brutal growing conditions for over 1,000 years, way before the first garden center even opened its doors. These are plants hand-selected by monks, emperors, and farmers to survive typhoon winds, volcanic soil, and crazy monsoon floods, followed by bone-dry summers. And get this, they do it all without a spray bottle, without a hyper-specific fertilizer schedule, and definitely without a seasonal subscription replanting model.
So here's our game plan for today's explainer. We're hitting the garden center money trap, masters of shade and water, high-value structural anchors, the champions of neglect, and finally, 2 fatal planting mistakes you absolutely have to avoid. Oh, and before we map out these specific assets, drop your USDA growing zone in the comments down below, because I'm actually going to call out exact zones as we move through this so you know exactly what works for your specific yard.
All right, Section 1, the garden center money trap. Let's talk about why we need to stop funding disposable landscapes. To really grasp why this shift is such a huge deal, we first have to completely scrap the mindset of treating our yards as a recurring seasonal bill. Stop throwing cash at temporary blooms. Instead, we're focusing on what we call compounding plant capital. This basically means putting your money into a living landscape asset that will literally multiply, dividing it to new saleable specimens or one that dramatically shoots up in raw dollar value over time. We're talking about plants that actively cross line items right off your future upkeep budget. It's not a chore, it's an investment, plain and simple.
Moving right along to Section 2, Masters of Shade and Water. This is all about solving those totally frustrating dead zones.
So how exactly do we fix those problematic dead zones in your yard? Well, the sheer financial reality of these specific plants is your answer. Think about an upfront purchase of, say, $12 to $25. It multiplies so fast. Take the Japanese forest grass, which thrives in zones 5 through 9. A single $12 plant divides cleanly every couple of years, meaning one plant easily becomes 12 full landscape-ready specimens in a decade. The same exact thing happens with the hosta in zones 3 through 9, giving you 8 or more divisions over time. Guys, these aren't one-season expenses. They're compounding investments that actively spread to cover bare ground. Ground that would otherwise cost you hundreds of dollars in replacement mulch every single year.
The biological engineering behind these returns is honestly mind-blowing. First off, Japanese forest grass grows in this beautiful mounding clump. It cascades rather than spreading aggressively via rhizomes, so it's never going to awkwardly invade your lawn. And because it evolved on super deep forest floors, it photosynthesizes incredibly efficiently in low, dappled light. Just picture that warm, gold-orange grass swaying in a late October breeze right in that bare patch under your oak tree, the spot that's defeated every other plant you've tried. Then, look at the hosta, or jiboshi. They evolved these massive broad leaves to maximize light capture in the deep shade canopy, plus super dense roots to outcompete weeds for moisture. Imagine an 18-inch neon chartreuse leaf totally lighting up a dark corner. Oh, and pro tip here, if you pop a hosta into an elevated container, you literally eliminate its main historical enemy, the garden slug.
Our third master of the elements is the Japanese iris. If you've got a useless, low, muddy spot by a downspout or the edge of a pond, this is your silver bullet. This plant actually evolved in the margins of rice paddies and flood-prone wetlands. That means it actively thrives in up to 6 inches of standing water, conditions that would just completely rot out the roots of almost any other flowering perennial. Plus, dividing it every 3 to 4 years is actually mandatory to keep it healthy. Think about that. Your basic maintenance literally requires you to multiply your investment for free. It magically turns a nasty mosquito breeding ground into a stunning display of lavender blue June blooms all across zones 4 through 9.
All right, let's jump into Section 3, High-Value Structural Anchors. Let's build some permanent equity. If you're the kind of person planning out what your yard looks like 5 years from now rather than just 5 days from now, you want to pay close attention to this part. We're looking at the absolute heavy hitters of landscape infrastructure. The Japanese maple for zones 5 through 8, and then Hinoki cypress for zones 4 through 8. Look, these aren't just pretty plants. They are structural anchors. Dwarf cultivars like the maple Sungokaku or the cypress's Nana gracilis grow in these incredible, dense, layered structures that require almost zero corrective pruning to look completely intentional and professionally designed.
And this completely illustrates the maple's raw real estate value. Seriously, you can plant an $80 tree today, and simply because of its highly sought-after architectural structure, it can conservatively appraise for $800 or even push up to $3 grand in 15 years. I mean, no other plant on our list compounds in raw dollar value quite like this one. Cultivars like the Crimson Queen hold these gorgeous stable red pigments right through the blistering summer heat thanks to some really specific biological engineering. Meanwhile, the Sangokaku gives you these glowing coral red bare branches that just pop against the winter snow. At the same time, the Hinoki cypress brings this incredible, deep green sculptural form to crazy January snowstorms, standing firm and vibrant while all your deciduous plants look bare and skeletal. Its biological secret? Well, it produces natural antimicrobial and antifungal wood oils that strongly resist the kind of humid climate rot that wipes out lesser evergreens. And here's a wild fact: these are the exact same sacred aromatic wood oils used to build Japanese temples and shrines that have literally stood for millennia. Planting one of these permanently removes a replacement line item from every future year's landscaping budget.
Moving to Section 4, the champions of neglect. These are the plants that actively punish you for pampering them.
So for these next assets, having zero upkeep isn't just some fun, lazy option. It's actually a biological necessity. The Japanese sedge and the peony have some of the absolute cheapest entry points on our list, but they offer some of the highest aesthetic and financial returns. But here's the catch. To succeed with them, you have to adopt a totally different mindset from the average homeowner. You literally have to learn how to just walk away.
The absolutely crucial thing to remember here is this: neglect is the correct technique. Let's look at the sedge, which is perfectly hardy in zones 5 through 9. Its narrow leaves are literally built for nutrient-poor, slightly dry soil. If you water it heavily and feed it fertilizer like it's a petunia, it grows super soft, floppy, and structurally weak. It actually punishes you for trying too hard. But if you just ignore it and lean soil, it tightens right up into a premium, fine-textured architectural clump that catches the morning frost beautifully along a gravel path. And at just $3 to $8 a plant, its upkeep budget is functionally zero.
Then we have the famous peony, hardy in zones 3 through 8. Now, peonies have been cultivated for over 1,000 years, and a big part of their staying power is a root system that actively resents being messed with. Once you plant it correctly, it will punish you if you try to move it. But simply walking away from a $20 nursery clump rewards you immensely. A mature clump is going to throw a dozen or more florist-grade stems annually. Since these stems sell for $5 to $8 each in season, you're looking at harvesting up to $100 of intensely fragrant cut flowers every single May, all from one initial $20 purchase. Unbelievable, right?
Finally, Section 5, 2 fatal planting mistakes. Let's talk about how to ruin your investment.
Because yes, even these practically unkillable investments can be totally destroyed before they even start to compound. The very first fatal mistake is using heavy, compacted, commercial bag topsoil straight off a garden center pallet. Every single plant on this list, but especially the maple and cypress, absolutely needs loosened, amended soil that's at least 12 inches deep. If their roots hit compacted bag soil at 6 inches, they just stop growing down, they circle around, and they die quietly. This is the invisible culprit behind 90% of those "my plant just died for no reason" stories. The second massive mistake is giving in to our default American instinct that more sun is always better. 4 of these assets, the forest grass, the hosta, the sedge, and the cypress if you're in a hot climate, actively prefer shade or partial shade. Sticking them in full blazing sun just out of habit will completely fry the most valuable assets in your whole portfolio. Which really leaves us with this final, incredibly important question. What is your yard going to look like 20 years from now? Seriously, what will it look like in 2046? The biological window for planting these unkillable 1,000-year Japanese assets is wide open right now. So do yourself a favor, go test your soil, respect their need for shade and absolute neglect, secure these super resilient assets, and please stop funding disposable seasonal landscapes. It's time to build a legacy that actually lasts. Thanks for hanging out with me on this explainer, and I absolutely cannot wait to see how your portfolios grow.